The year is 2020. The month, March. A worldwide pandemic grips the globe. Fear and uncertainty cloud the air. Nations brace for the unknown. Governments scramble for solutions. The world watches in disbelief. In these unprecedented times, life as we know it changes. The bustling streets fall silent, replaced by an eerie stillness. A new reality sets in, a reality of isolation, quarantine, and lockdowns. The world holds its breath, waiting for what's to come. In the heart of Manchester, two roommates, Joe and Sam, find their lives turned upside down. Joe, a self-proclaimed nerd, is more reserved, finding comfort in his own company. Sam, on the other hand, is the life of the party, always surrounded by friends. Despite their differences, they've managed to coexist peacefully, their lives intertwined by the shared space they call home. But the lockdown forces them into a constant, inescapable proximity, testing the boundaries of their friendship and uncovering hidden desires. The announcement of a national lockdown sends shockwaves through the nation. For Joe and Sam, it means a complete upheaval of their daily routines. Gone are the days of work, socializing, and freedom. They are now confined to their flat, left to navigate the complexities of their new reality. The walls seem to close in, amplifying their differences and fueling a sense of restlessness within both of them. Little do they know, this lockdown will become a catalyst, pushing them down a path of unexpected discoveries and hidden desires. The days blurred into nights. The once familiar routine of work and social life dissolved into an endless cycle of monotony. Joe, used to the comforting solitude of his work, now felt the suffocating weight of isolation pressing down on him. The silence of the flat, once a welcome respite, now echoed the emptiness growing within him. Sam, a social butterfly grounded by the lockdown's restrictions, paced the flat like a caged animal. His usual boundless energy, now with no outlet, crackled in the air, creating a palpable tension. The shared space, once a symbol of their independent lives, morphed into a pressure cooker of unspoken frustrations and simmering desires. The lockdown, it seemed, was peeling back their carefully constructed facades, exposing the raw vulnerabilities beneath. The absence of physical intimacy gnawed at Joe. He found himself yearning for a connection, a release from the mounting pressure of confinement. The initial novelty of endless free time quickly faded, replaced by a dull ache of longing. The internet, once a source of entertainment, became a relentless reminder of his isolation, flooded with images of carefree lives lived before the world changed. He tried to fill the void with the fleeting satisfaction of online encounters, but the pixelated faces and hollow conversations only amplified his loneliness. The casual flings of his pre-lockdown life now seemed like distant memories, lost in a world that no longer existed. Desperation began to creep in, whispering possibilities he'd never before entertained. The lines blurred, and the once unthinkable began to take root in the fertile ground of his loneliness. The familiar blue and white icon of Grindr beckoned from his phone screen, a portal to a world he'd always viewed with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The decision, once agonizing, now seemed almost inevitable. Driven by a potent cocktail of boredom, loneliness, and unfulfilled desire, Joe took the plunge, creating an anonymous profile, a digital mask to shield his true identity. The app's interface, a grid of faces and torso shots, felt both exhilarating and strangely liberating. It was a world where desires were laid bare, unburdened by the complexities of social expectations. With each swipe, each message received, Joe felt the weight of his loneliness lift, replaced by a thrilling sense of possibility. He had stepped into the unknown, and for the first time since the lockdown began, he felt truly alive. The Grindr interface, a tapestry of faces and physiques, both intrigued and overwhelmed Joe. Each profile picture held a story, a desire waiting to be explored. Messages flooded his inbox, a torrent of greetings and propositions. Joe, initially hesitant, found himself drawn into the anonymity of it all, the freedom to engage without the weight of real-world consequences. He responded tentatively at first, each reply chipping away at his inhibitions. The conversations, fueled by shared boredom and a hunger for connection, quickly turned flirtatious, pushing the boundaries of his comfort zone. As days turned into nights, Joe found himself spending hours on the app, the virtual world offering an escape from the dreary reality of lockdown. The line between curiosity and genuine desire blurred, his anonymity emboldening him to explore the depths of his desires. Amidst the sea of profiles, one stood out: "Dare me." The username, laced with a hint of mischief and a promise of something taboo, piqued Joe's interest. Intrigued, Joe sent a message, a simple "hey" that belied the nervous flutter in his chest. The response was almost instantaneous, a digital invitation into a world of anonymous thrills. Dare me was everything Joe wasn't. Bold, daring, and seemingly unafraid of the consequences. The lockdown, it seemed, had unleashed a recklessness in this stranger, a desire to push the boundaries of what was acceptable. Joe, the self-proclaimed nerd, found himself drawn to this dangerous energy, the promise of vicarious thrills too tempting to resist. He decided to play along, unaware of the tangled web he was about to weave. The dare started innocently enough, a test of boundaries rather than a plunge into the deep end. A suggestive picture, a whispered confession, each request pushing Joe further out of his comfort zone. Dare Me was eager to please, each dare met with an enthusiastic response, a digital exhibitionism that both thrilled and unsettled Joe. The power dynamic, the control he held over this anonymous stranger, ignited a spark within him, a newfound confidence he'd never known. He upped the ante, each dare bolder than the last, testing the limits of what Dare Me was willing to do. With each successful challenge, a strange sense of intimacy blossomed, a connection forged in the crucible of shared secrets and forbidden desires. Joe, once content with the shadows, found himself craving more. He wanted to see the face behind the mask, to unravel the mystery of the man who was so willing to bare his soul, his body, to a complete stranger. The request for a face pic hung in the air, heavy with unspoken tension. Joe held his breath, his heart pounding in his chest, a mixture of anticipation and dread coursing through him. The notification pinged, a sharp sound that cut through the silence of his room. Joe hesitated, his finger hovering over the message, afraid of what he might find. He took a deep breath and clicked. The image loaded pixel by pixel, revealing a face that sent a jolt of shock and disbelief through him. It was Sam. The world tilted on its axis. His roommate, the object of countless office fantasies, the epitome of heterosexuality, was the anonymous daredevil who had been baring his soul to him, a stranger hiding in plain sight. A mind in turmoil, processing the revelation. Joe stared at the image on his phone, his mind struggling to reconcile the Sam he knew with the anonymous daredevil he'd been chatting with. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under him, leaving him teetering on the precipice of disbelief. Sam, the epitome of masculinity, the life of the party, the one who effortlessly attracted women. This was the guy who craved anonymous dares, the guy who willingly exposed himself to strangers online. A wave of nausea washed over him, followed by a strange sense of betrayal. He felt foolish for not realizing it sooner, for mistaking Sam's carefully constructed persona for the entirety of who he was. But as the initial shock began to subside, a different emotion flickered to life within him. Intrigue. The knowledge of Sam's secret, the power he now held, sent a shiver down his spine. The realization struck Joe with the force of a lightning bolt. He could use this. He could manipulate Sam, orchestrate situations, all while hiding behind the safety of his anonymous persona. The power dynamic had shifted, and Joe, the self-proclaimed nerd, suddenly found himself holding all the cards. The thrill of control, the ability to make Sam dance to his tune, was intoxicating. He knew he was playing with fire, that the consequences of exposure could be catastrophic. But the temptation, the allure of pushing the boundaries of their reality, was too strong to resist. Joe decided to tread carefully, to test the waters before diving headfirst into the depths of this dangerous game. He'd make Sam come to him, make him crave the dares, make him dependent on the anonymous figure who held his desires in their hands. Joe crafted his next message carefully, his words laced with a subtle dominance he'd never dared to use before. He wanted to see how far he could push Sam, how much he was willing to risk for a taste of the forbidden. The dare was simple, yet loaded with risk. Sam had to send a picture of himself exposing himself in their shared living room, with Joe present. It was a test of loyalty, of boundaries, a way for Joe to gauge the depth of Sam's desire. The minutes stretched into an eternity as Joe waited for Sam's response. He could hear Sam moving around in his room, the sounds muffled by the thin walls, each creak of the floorboards heightening the tension. Finally the notification pinged. Joe's heart leaped into his throat as he opened the message, his finger trembling slightly as he clicked on the image. Section 4. Living on the Edge. A Dare in the Dark. The image was blurry, taken in haste. But there was no mistaking the scene. Sam, exposed, vulnerable in their shared living room with Joe just feet away, oblivious to the show unfolding behind him. A surge of adrenaline shot through Joe, a potent cocktail of fear and excitement. He was playing a dangerous game, toying with fire, but the heat felt exhilarating, addictive. He wanted to push further, test the limits of Sam's obedience, but a flicker of caution held him back. He had to maintain control, keep Sam guessing, ensure he remained the puppet master in this twisted game they were playing. "You like living on the edge, don't you?" Joe typed back, his words dripping with a confidence he'd never felt before. "Let's see what other risks you're willing to take." Section 5. The Thrill of the Risk. A Dangerous Desire Ignited. Sam's reply was almost instantaneous, his eagerness palpable through the screen. "Anything you want," he typed back, the words laced with a desperation that sent a shiver down Joe's spine. Joe leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. He had Sam right where he wanted him, hooked, vulnerable, and completely under his control. The game had begun, and Joe, the once timid observer, was now the architect of their shared reality, shaping their desires, their fears, and their deepest, most hidden selves. The lockdown, once a prison, had transformed into a playground, a stage for their twisted desires to play out, fueled by the intoxicating anonymity of the internet and the dangerous thrill of the unknown. Section 1. Confined Desires, Lockdown's Toll on Sam. The walls of the apartment seemed to close in, each passing day blurring into the next. Sam, used to a life of social freedom and physical intimacy, found himself wrestling with a growing sense of restlessness. The usual distractions, the gym, the pub, the thrill of a new conquest were all stripped away, leaving him with an emptiness he couldn't shake. He found himself staring out the window, longing for the world beyond their lockdown bubble. The sight of Joe, constantly glued to his computer screen, only amplified his frustration. Sam craved interaction, a spark, anything to break the monotony. His usual confidence wavered, replaced by a nagging sense of vulnerability. His thoughts, once focused on external conquests, turned inward. He found himself dwelling on past encounters, replaying moments of intimacy, the memory of touch, a phantom sensation on his skin. The lockdown, he realized, had awoken a hunger within him, a yearning for a connection that ran deeper than he'd ever acknowledged. Section 2. Grindr, a Dangerous Temptation. The blue icon glowed on his phone screen, a beacon of forbidden desires. Grindr. He'd always scoffed at the idea, brushed it off as something for other people. But now, in the suffocating grip of lockdown, the lines blurred. It started as a joke, a way to alleviate the boredom. He created an anonymous profile, Dare Me, hiding his face, shielding his true identity. It was a mask he could wear, a way to explore the edges of his curiosity without consequence. The responses were immediate, a flood of messages, propositions, and requests. The anonymity was intoxicating, freeing him from the expectations and judgments of the real world. He felt a surge of power, a thrill he hadn't anticipated. He started small, testing the waters, each dare pushing him further out of his comfort zone. The attention, the validation, it filled a void he hadn't realized existed. He was hooked, drawn deeper into a world of anonymous desires, the line between curiosity and genuine desire blurring with each passing day. Section 3. The Anonymous Thrill, Embracing the Dare. The dares escalated, each one bolder, riskier, pushing him closer to the edge. He found himself agreeing to things he never imagined, fueled by a potent cocktail of boredom, desire, and the intoxicating anonymity of the virtual world. There was a thrill in the danger, in the possibility of being caught, the knowledge that Joe was just a wall away, completely oblivious to the show unfolding in their shared space. It was a secret he held close, a source of both shame and exhilaration. The dares became a release, a way to reclaim a sense of control in a world where everything felt uncertain. He clung to the anonymity, to the power it gave him, the ability to explore these hidden desires without consequence. He didn't know the person behind the anonymous profile, but there was a strange intimacy in their interactions, a shared understanding that transcended the digital divide. He found himself craving their approval, their next challenge, their validation. Section 4. A Revelation in the Dark. Joe's Secret Revealed. The latest dare sent a shiver down his spine. Strip naked, walk into the living room, set a timer for 5 minutes. The risk was exhilarating, terrifying. He hesitated, his finger hovering over the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced at Joe's closed bedroom door, a wave of guilt washing over him. But the desire, the need to feel something, anything, overrode his hesitation. He stripped off his clothes, his skin tingling with a mixture of fear and anticipation. He crept into the living room, his bare feet silent on the cold floor. The darkness felt both comforting and suffocating. He fumbled for his phone, his hand shaking as he set the timer. 5 minutes. He started to touch himself, needing a release, the danger fueling his arousal. Then, he heard it. The creak of Joe's door. His heart leaped into his throat. He froze, his breath catching in his chest as Joe's shadowy figure emerged from the hallway. He was exposed, vulnerable, his secret about to be laid bare. Section 1. The Puppet Master, Joe's Delight. A surge of power coursed through Joe as he read Sam's frantic messages. His roommate, the epitome of confidence, was reduced to a trembling mess, hiding in the shadows of their shared apartment, all thanks to him. He reread the part where Sam described his desperate act of masturbation, the image of his roommate's cum shooting into the air playing vividly in his mind. The knowledge that he had elicited such a response, had brought Sam to the brink of exposure and humiliation, was intoxicating. He savored the power dynamic, the way his words held sway over Sam's actions. He was the puppet master, pulling the strings, orchestrating their secret encounters from the safety of his anonymous persona. The possibilities swirled in his mind, each dare more daring than the last. He'd break down Sam's carefully constructed facade piece by piece until all that remained was the raw, vulnerable truth of his desires. He'd make Sam crave his commands, make him dependent on the anonymous figure who held his deepest desires in their hands. Section 2. A Dangerous Desire, the Seed of Doubt. But beneath the surface of Joe's triumph, a seed of doubt began to sprout. Sam's confession about finding Joe's unintentional erection a turn-on left him unsettled. A crack in the facade of control he'd so carefully constructed. He reread the message, each word a hammer blow to his confidence. He was hard. It kinda turned me on even more though. The words echoed in his mind, a discordant melody that disrupted the symphony of power he'd been orchestrating. Was Sam truly attracted to him? Or was it simply the thrill of the risk, the forbidden nature of their encounter? The line between their fabricated reality and genuine desire blurred, leaving Joe questioning his own motives. He pushed the thought aside, clinging to the safety of his anonymity. He would maintain control, he told himself, keep Sam at arm's length, a plaything to be manipulated for his own amusement. But deep down, a flicker of fear ignited, a fear that he was no longer the puppet master in this dangerous game they were playing. Section 1. The Future of the Dare, an Uncertain Path. The lockdown stretched on, a suffocating blanket over their lives. Joe, emboldened by his newfound power, dove deeper into the world of anonymous dares, crafting scenarios that tested the limits of Sam's obedience and fueled his own desires. Sam, caught in a web of his own making, teetered on the edge of exposure, each dare a gamble that threatened to shatter the fragile normalcy of their shared existence. The thrill of the risk, the intoxicating blend of shame and desire, kept him bound to his anonymous master, his need for validation overriding his fear of discovery. The line between their online personas and their true selves blurred with each passing day. The power dynamic shifted, desires awakened, the once unthinkable now a tangible reality lurking just beneath the surface. But as the dares intensified, so did the risk. The walls of their carefully constructed reality threatened to crumble, leaving them exposed, vulnerable, and forever changed by the secrets they shared in the darkness. The future of their dare, like the lockdown itself, remained uncertain. A dangerous game with no clear winner, only the promise of consequences yet to be faced.